Chapter 5. The Law of the Food Chain. The metallic stench of blood and filth grew stronger as the forest vegetation thickened around us. I crawled beneath the roots of enormous trees protruding from the soil and watched through a hanging curtain of vines. A dark crevice split the stone ahead. It was not a fortress. It was a filthy hole. The overwhelming stench of ammonia drifting from within made one thing obvious. The creatures living there possessed absolutely no understanding of basic sanitation. From my hiding place, I silently watched the 9 goblins shove their 3 exhausted human prisoners toward the entrance. They kicked the captives through the narrow opening and disappeared with them into the darkness. 2 goblins remained outside. The first carried a rusted sword. An iron helmet, at least 3 sizes too large, covered most of its head. It repeatedly used the hilt of its sword to push the helmet upward whenever it slipped over its eyes. The second guard held a crude wooden bow. A dainty strip of cloth covered one of its eyes. It appeared to be imitating the appearance of some adventurer it had once seen. Unfortunately, the result only made it look both ridiculous and stupid. I resisted the urge to snort. Then I shifted my attention toward the tunnel where the captives had been taken. 3 humans. The 2 women wore the remains of torn leather armor. They were probably ordinary adventurers. The plump man dragged behind them clearly was not. He wore no armor. Beneath the mud and tears, his brightly colored linen tunic and wide leather belt practically announced his profession. A merchant. 2 poorly equipped guards and 1 fat walking purse. This had probably been a small merchant party traveling through the forest. If the goblins had dragged them here alive, then the group must have been ambushed somewhere along the path. That meant bodies had been left behind. A trail of corpses. And potentially, a feast of essence far too valuable to leave rotting in the forest. Fall back. I sent the command through the mental connection. My 3 vassals began withdrawing with me. Before I could leave, however, the bladder inside my tiny body suddenly demanded attention. I held back a curse. With no other choice, I walked to the nearest tree, raised one hind leg, and relieved myself against the trunk. A former hunter who had once entered gates was now urinating like a stray dog marking its territory. Whatever remained of my dignity had been thoroughly destroyed. After finishing my business, I turned around and followed the trail left by the goblin patrol. Drops of blood, broken branches, and disturbed leaves led us through the forest. Eventually, the canopy opened slightly. Sunlight illuminated a devastated patch of ground. A killing field. But this was not meaningless chaos. My eyes immediately began reconstructing the battle. 2 goblins lay close together, each with a clean cut across the throat. The others had died farther apart. Their wounds were rougher and more desperate. The humans must have gained the advantage at first. Then their formation had collapsed. They had been surrounded from multiple directions. Arrows remained scattered among the corpses. The goblins had not collected them. Perhaps they had been in a hurry to secure their prisoners. Or perhaps there had been enough of them that abandoned weapons did not matter. The forest was completely silent. No insects buzzed. No birds sang. It felt as though the land had not yet finished digesting what had happened here. The sharp smell of human blood entered my nose. It was disturbingly familiar. 2 male corpses lay among the uprooted grass. Both wore armor and travel cloaks, and several arrows protruded from their bodies. They must have been the remaining adventurers assigned to protect the merchant. 4 goblin corpses surrounded them. Another 2 lay nearby. 6 goblin bodies in total. I stared at the dead adventurers. My tactical instincts urged me to use them. Human bodies would make far more capable vassals than these inferior monsters. Their physical structure was stronger. Their hands could use proper weapons, and they already possessed combat experience. The idea of turning fellow humans into puppets made the remains of my conscience recoil. But I needed power. If I wanted to survive and rescue the prisoners, I needed stronger warriors. I pushed the moral issue aside and turned toward the 6 goblin corpses. First, I needed their essence. Absorb. Dark tendrils spread from my paws and entered all 6 bodies. One surge of scorching energy followed another. The accumulated essence flooded through me. Notifications rapidly appeared. 6 goblin essences assimilated. Level 4 reached. Level 5 reached. Maximum mana increased from 70 to 90. Random attributes increased. Agility increased by 1. Strength increased by 1. Total free attribute points, 4. Level 5 milestone reached. Maximum vassal slots increased from 3 to 5. Energy erupted inside my chest. The muscles beneath my fur contracted and became slightly denser. At the same time, the force of the 6 absorbed essences traveled through my connections to the vassals. Each individual essence normally provided them with only a small amount of recovery. 6 at once was different. The wounds on the cave rat's back visibly tightened. Torn flesh pulled together, allowing it to move with renewed alertness. The elderly goblin became completely still. Its frail body had always trembled, but now its posture appeared firmer. Through the mental link, I could feel residual energy settling deep inside the damaged corpse. I curled my snout into a satisfied smile. I now had 2 empty vassal slots. My attention returned to one of the armored human corpses. I swallowed and forced down the last of my hesitation. Then I placed one paw against the man's chest. I was prepared to carry this sin. Arise. A blue panel appeared and flashed before my eyes. Error. The target species is incompatible with this skill. I froze. The cold, emotionless rejection struck harder than I expected. Frustration immediately surged through me. Damn it. My entire calculation had been wrong. I had drained 6 goblin corpses to increase my level and expand my army, believing I could use the dead humans as stronger vassals. I had discarded my conscience and gambled my resources. Now the system had rejected humanity entirely. Weiss, the goblin corpses surrounding me had already been emptied of essence. They could no longer be raised. It was an embarrassing tactical failure for someone who considered himself an experienced hunter. I was still cursing my stupidity when my ears twitched. A twig snapped. Then dry leaves rustled beneath several approaching feet. The sounds came from the direction of the goblin lair. I immediately jumped behind a cluster of enormous ferns. My 3 vassals followed and pressed themselves against the muddy ground. More than a dozen short, green figures emerged from between the trees. They carried wooden clubs, chip knives, and serrated daggers. The goblins spread across the battlefield and immediately began stripping armor, gathering weapons, and searching the overturned merchant cart for anything useful. I frowned. Had these creatures not been part of the patrol escorting the prisoners earlier? I studied them through the fern leaves. One goblin bore a distinctive scar along its arm. I remembered seeing that exact scar among the group that had dragged the merchant toward the cave. So that was it. They had thrown the prisoners into the lair, then returned to loot the battlefield. More than a dozen goblins were now wandering outside their base. That meant only a small number remained inside. This was not merely an opportunity. It was an open invitation. While the larger force celebrated among the corpses, the narrow passage leading into their lair would be almost empty. I would never find a better chance to infiltrate the cave and rescue the captives. I looked through the trees toward the route we had followed earlier. With the looting party gathered here, the path back to the lair should be clear. Only the 2 ridiculous guards remained at its entrance. My eyes narrowed. 2 guards. And after reaching level 5, I had exactly 2 empty vassal slots waiting to be filled. The coincidence was far too convenient to ignore. Those goblins were not merely obstacles. They were potential recruits. It was time for an execution.